And welcome to another edition of Life Outdoors. I am your host, Chris Reckling. Super excited about today's edition of Life Outdoors because when you go outside, there's a lot of great things that you can see in nature. You can see what's growing, you can see the trees around you, you can see what's coming up out of the ground, or you can look up into the skies and see something incredible. And I don't know about you, but I'm always amazed when I see birds, and I'm always amazed when I see them fly, and I wish that I could be just like them. But there's a certain set of birds that are even more amazing than just your regular everyday songbirds. How about birds of prey, like raptors, like owls or hawks or falcons or eagles, and the amazing comeback of the eagle, just to name a little bit of something like that. So we're talking about owls, we're talking about raptors, we're talking about how you can help them, and we're also talking about an amazing group of people who are helping our wildlife, and that group is called Nature's Nanny Wildlife Rehabilitation. This is Dawn Federovich. She is the volunteer coordinator with Nature's Nanny Wildlife Rehabilitation. Dawn, welcome to Life Outdoors.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about Nature's Nanny Wildlife Rehabilitation. What is it all about, and what is it you guys do there?
We are a nonprofit located in the Western Branch area of Chesapeake. We rescue and rehabilitate our native wild birds of prey. We also work with corvids, crows, blue jays, and we also do some waterfowl like your night herons and great blues. So
those birds, the blue heron, the egrets, cormorants, all those guys, they're a little crazy.
They are.
I mean, when you know your birds, you know that they're like crazy, and those beaks, and they're not a happy bird.
They're not, yeah. They're very dangerous, too.
I know,
yeah.
Right? Because they do that thing right there.
Yeah, they're lunge feeders, so they're going to go after your eyes.
And that beak, yeah. Have you been snapped up by one of those guys?
No, I haven't, but I've been
Smart.
bitten in the arm by them before because
And
they
really?
lunge around, because their necks are so long so they can move.
You got bit in the arm?
Uh-huh.
How was it?
It was like a pinch. It wasn't too bad. It was a young one, luckily.
Oh, good.
But, yeah.
Yeah, big boy, the big blue heron. You don't want that.
No.
Okay, let's talk about the raptors, the amazing raptors. You guys specialize in owls and raptors and all that. You've got all this animals. How many birds do you have right now at Nature's Nanny?
Approximately 20. Most of them are ambassadors right now. We do have a few babies. We're rounding up baby season. But we have about 10 education birds in our education program, though.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about the education, how important that is. But right now we want to focus in on rehabilitating these birds. You have them for certain reasons. They might get kicked out of the nest. They might be poisoned. They might have been injured. They might have been hit by something. Whatever. What are some of the most common reasons you guys get birds of prey and whatever birds you're looking at?
We get a lot of car impacts, rodenticide poisoning, lead poisoning. We also have guys that get stuck in soccer nets and fishing line. So it's a lot of negative human interaction that these guys bring them to us, unfortunately. But that's why we do what we do, so we can educate about those things.
So we have a little bit of footage that we're going to roll here, and this is. Nature's Nanny was founded by Dana Lusher, and we'll see Dana in here. What have you learned about Dana and her commitment and all the other volunteers' commitment to try to help these wildlife?
It takes a special person to be in this world for sure, and Dana's incredible. She's so full of knowledge. She's so caring. She's just so understanding and accepting. So it's an amazing world to be in, but it is really hard. And like I said, it takes a special person. It takes a lot of dedication, a lot of time, and we don't get paid for it. It's, we're not funded by the state or the government, and everything is run on volunteer time and donations. So...
Well, let's talk a little bit more about the difficulty and challenges of being a rehabilitator, because it's 24/7. These birds are like humans. They're patients. They need a lot of help. They need a lot of time. They need to get better, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, and we deal with both diurnal and nocturnal animals. So we get calls during the day, we get calls in the middle of the night. So it is a 24/7 job, and there has to be someone on call at all times. And we even have our rescue, our transporters who do a lot of work also. They're not to be forgotten about because they're a big part. It takes a village to do all of this. We have volunteers from different stages of life that do different things for Nature's Nanny, whether it's social media, whether it's marketing, whether it's, handling the birds, doing education. So we have a wide spectrum of volunteer opportunities.
I also think it's important to note that you guys are not the only local group that is wildlife rehabilitators. There's so many other dedicated people that are doing the same thing.
Yeah, and we all work together. We have to because we'll get calls about mammals, but we don't do mammals, so we're going to transfer them on to a mammal rehabber, and so on with our bats and our they all have different rehabbers in this area, and we all try to work to get the animals to the right place. So we don't, necessarily turn them away, but we do find them the right rehabber.
So that's Celeste, right?
That is Celeste.
You guys have
girl.
ambassadors, and these birds, for whatever reason, cannot be put back into the wild, and then they become education birds. I know you guys get connected to them. What have you learned about these birds of prey that is so special? Because they all have their own personalities and are all different. Right? They're like people in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and most importantly, you have to remember when you're working with these guys, they're wild. I've learned patience. I've learned dedication also. But I also love to learn all the nerdy facts about them and teaching you about them. But they are also, we have to respect them. And it runs on respect. It runs on their time. And we have to remember that too. But they are special, and it's an amazing opportunity to be a part of, to help these guys.
Of course, the goal is to get them back in the air. Sometimes that doesn't happen, and that's the hard part.
That is very hard.
Because you guys love these animals, you love these creatures, but it doesn't always work out.
Right, it doesn't. And sometimes we do have sad cases where we have to make the right decision for these guys. Quality of life is important. It's number one. So if they're not going to have a good quality of life, we have to do what we have to do. But a lot of times our guys that can't be released, we find education programs for them. And if we can't keep them in-house on our program, we will send them all over the country, actually. We've had birds go to Utah. We've had birds go to Florida. So we do try our best to find them a home if they can't be with us.
Okay, so you mentioned education program. I think now's a good time to take a little bit of a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the education program, why that is so important, and how they're getting out into the community, and then we're going to get to how you can help. So everybody stick around that. We'll take a short little break here on Life Outdoors. And welcome back to Life Outdoors. I am your host, Chris Reckling. We are joined today with Dawn Federovich. She is a volunteer coordinator with Nature's Nanny Wildlife Rehabilitation. In the first segment, we talked about what you guys do. And your mission, first and foremost, is to take care of these amazing birds, get them back in the air whenever possible. Sometimes they become education birds. We'll talk more about the education process in a bit. But let's just talk about who you have right there next to you. Speaking of education birds, unfortunately, it didn't work out for
this
Cosmos.
Guy. Yeah, this is Cosmos. He was a great horned owl that came in years ago. He passed, unfortunately. There wasn't anything we can do for him. But at our events, we get asked a lot to touch our birds, but you cannot. They are federally protected. And you have to have special permits just to, handle them. So we had this guy taxidermy so people can actually touch them and feel what they are like in real life, and they can see the talons up close and see how big they are. They're, so they can interact with it, whereas they can't interact with the live ones. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a good outcome.
Well, since we're looking at the great horned owl, that is a male and significantly smaller than the female. That is one bad dude right there.
Yeah, the great horned owls are actually an apex predator. So they're the largest owl we have here in Virginia, and they have no enemies really.
Eagles, no problem.
Yeah, well,
Osprey, no problem. Other owls, no problem.
Nothing.
I'm going to take what I want, and you can just look at that face and tell. It's like, I'm the man.
Yeah, and the females are a third of the size bigger, so they're massive. And we do have a female in our education program named Eclipse, and she's about 3 pounds. So holding her feels like a ton. Whereas you see this guy, he was way less than that, maybe a pound, maybe 2. But they can get up to 5 or 6 pounds, and their wingspan can get up to 6 feet. So
yeah.
They're pretty powerful.
They're powerful, and I heard they've done quite a number on the osprey population here in town.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they like to raid the nests.
Yes. Unfortunately, these guys do. They're nocturnal, so they are known to go rob nests at night, hawks, anything that's available out there, they're opportunists. So.
Nocturnal. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's their advantage.
And, the thing about the owls are, we know that they're the symbolism of being wise, and their camouflage is great. Rarely do you see them in nature, but when you do see one, I mean, I have an eagle eye. I see birds all the time. I rarely see an owl.
You don't, and they're very elusive. It's hard to see them. And I actually found one, my first one in the wild. I was hiking, and I was actually following a red tail during the day, and I lost it, but I looked up in a broken tree, and all of a sudden the head turned, and I saw bright orange. I was like, oh my gosh,
Screech.
that's a great horned owl.
Oh,
yeah, it was up at the top. Yeah. He was blended in perfectly, because these are called, these actually are not ears. They're called plumiforms. They show a lot of emotion with those, whether they're scared, they're excited, they're angry. But they also serve as camouflage when they're up in the trees. It kind of breaks up the silhouette when they're up there.
Well, I can tell that Cosmos is angry right there. Can we at least make him friendly if he's going to? I mean, look at that look. He looks mad.
Their faces are always intimidating. They look like they want to steal your soul. They like to make eye contact.
Gosh, that's crazy. Speaking of which, I will say I did put up a screech owl box, and I had a screech owl within like 10 days.
That's awesome.
I mean, come on.
Yeah, they're amazing, and screech owls are amazing. We have 4 native owls here in Virginia. We have the screech owl, we have our barn owl, and then we have our great horned. But the screech owls are the most social that you'll ever see in the wild.
Yeah, and he just sat there and chilled out and slept all day right in the opening. And then, I know he was doing his thing at night, but in the daytime he'd just sit there.
They just sit there and sleep all day unless they're, and these guys actually, the great horn, all the owls can hunt during the day.
When there's babies, they got to hunt.
Yes, they have to hunt constantly. But they're mostly nocturnal or twilight, so from dusk till dawn they're, hunting.
Well, let's talk more about the education program, and we're going to show you just last week, just recently, you guys were in Portsmouth at Craddock Public Library doing one of your typical education programs. How important are these programs? Because this is kind of where it starts, because you guys can maybe alleviate some of the more work later that you guys have to do.
Yeah, these are very important programs. Dana's mentioned before that, a long time ago, people didn't know rehabbers existed, wildlife rehabbers. And doing these programs helps us get the awareness out there. And because, everyday people, they don't think about our raptors, and they don't think about what the impact is that we have on these guys. But birds are an indicator species, so if there's something going wrong in the bird world, there's something going on in the human world that's even worse. So, but our education program is very robust. We have probably about 25 volunteers on our education permit, and we go all over. We do big conferences. We do for our educators and our rehabbers. We actually get to do conferences to learn on our own too for continuing education. But we do, we go to libraries, we go where people ask us really. One of my favorites to do though is children in schools. That's to me where it starts.
Yeah. Everybody loves to see these birds up close and personal, which is, and you'll always learn something. And there's a lot of messages and some of the biggest issues you have. And we'll talk more about that. But when you get in front of the kids, in front of the people, what are some of the things that comes up all the time? And what are some of the interesting things that you've seen when you do an education program?
One of the things I'm most amazed by is the kids that come up and already know the answers.
Wow.
They already know about the owls. They already know they're nocturnal. They already know what they eat. They already know where they live. And that is incredible to me. That goes to the schools because they're teaching that, or even the parents, getting them outside and learning. Because it's easy to talk to adults and tell them what's going on, but getting them the care is different. Whereas children, they're, more into it and more wanting to learn about it and stuff. So I believe, it's very important.
You mentioned they're an indicator species. We've all heard of the canary in the coal mine, and we know that back in the 70s when the eagles were almost wiped out because of DDT and all the other birds, because we had to figure out what's going on. Why are they disappearing? And so, like you said, indicator species. You have to put things together and learn from the past.
Yeah.
We know that they're faced with a lot of challenges now with human interaction, loss of habitat, and other things around, in neighborhoods. And we'll get more into that in a bit. But before we go, when you have these education programs, what is the main mission for you guys at Nature's Nanny?
To get our birds back into the wild. That's
Yeah.
our number one mission.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't happen, but it is what our number one goal is and what we strive
Always.
for.
And educate them how they can help. So with that being said, we're going to take a short little break and talk about more that you can do to help these birds, these amazing birds, get back in the air, and some of the more things that they're faced with that's kind of our fault and our problem, but we can make a difference in this. So stick around, everybody. You're watching Life Outdoors. And welcome back to Life Outdoors. I'm your host, Chris Reckling. We are joined today by Dawn Federovich as the volunteer coordinator for Nature's Nanny Wildlife Rehabilitation. How long have you been with Nature's Nanny, and why did you get involved?
I've been with them for 2.5 years. September will be 3 years. Why I got involved is because I've always wanted to work with wildlife. I've always loved animals. So I was at a point in my life where I wanted to look for a change, a way to help with all the crashing of the world around us, so to speak. If I could change one thing, even if it's a small thing, I wanted to do that, and it's with the animals. So that's what brought me into the rescue world.
Yeah, but you just don't jump right into working with birds or just like out of the blue. You have to have some background. You have to have some knowledge of birds. You just can't just jump right in. You grew up around birds.
I did grow up. My grandmother had birds when I was younger. And then as an adult, I had my own birds. And then I started a parrot rescue. And then I reached out to Dana. That's how I got into it, was the parrots, because I was looking for a bird rescue. But I wasn't expecting birds of prey. That wasn't what I was looking for. But once I got into that world, I couldn't leave it.
Right.
Yeah. So they're working with raptors is a completely different world than working with parrots or pets in general, because these guys aren't pets. They're wild, and we have to respect that they are wild.
When you have them in your care, they get used to you. At some point, you have to keep them secluded around their types to get them to release and to go back to where they were. Mm-hmm. When they're younger, that's kind of harder to do.
It is very
They
hard.
imprint quickly on you.
Yeah, you have a very small window with raptors on the imprinting. So it's really important when they do come in that they either have a foster or there's another species that's the same age that we can put them together so they can learn to be wild together. So in the imprinting, it's very important not to, obviously, because we want to get these guys back out there.
Yeah.
So we do our best to avoid that. Whether it's, even if we don't have a foster or another bird that's the same age, we can send them to other places so that we can avoid that imprinting.
Let's talk about some of the pitfalls and some of the issues that they're faced with today. So, loss of habitat is critical for these animals, for these birds, these raptors, and poisons are a big deal.
Yeah.
Let's get to that, because people don't understand when they're trying to kill mice and rats. They don't know it, but indirectly might be killing owls or animals and birds of prey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so rodenticides are one of our number one issues that we have. And it's a very sad death for these guys because there's not much you can do for them, unfortunately.
Walk us through the process, because people don't realize when they go to their store and they buy poison, boom, they've already made the decision that it could lead to Cosmo. Go ahead.
And so the way it starts out is, you get the rat poison, you put it out. And so it actually takes a little while for that stuff to build up in the rodent's body. But when that owl or hawk comes down to get that little bit that they have in their body, even though it's not killing the mouse right away, it is going to kill that bird. And it takes a very little bit to do so. And the rodenticides are an anticoagulant, which means they don't stop bleeding. And unfortunately, you could get the idea of the rest that happens to our birds.
Yeah,
unfortunately,
it's
not good.
Also, lead poisoning is another issue. Hunters out there leaving if not catching whatever they've killed, a bird sees it's an opportunity for a free meal. They go down, they get a little bit of lead, and it doesn't take much.
It doesn't. It's the size of a grain of rice is what it takes to kill an eagle. We have been trying to encourage, copper, any other kind of shot that can be used to kill these guys, or when you're hunting.
Yeah.
Because a lot of hunters, they'll dress their deer in the field and they leave it, and then that's when our scout. It's not just birds; it's our foxes. It's it's all whoever eats it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that lead in the deer goes back to their family. They don't think about that part either.
and let's backtrack on the rodenticide and the poisons that are used. You can get a poison that is non-lethal to birds, and
Yes.
it's not even poison. It's
not. It's actually a contraceptive for mice.
Right.
Yeah, and actually it takes. We did try it out because we did have mice, and it took about 3 months to get there where there was no more activity. So we had no more babies, and it just goes in their water. And it does not harm anything else in the environment.
Okay, and there's also some other issues out there too. Soccer goals, soccer nets. These birds don't see them sometimes. They get stuck. What happens then?
Yeah, they have, when birds focus on their prey, they zero in on it. They're not going to see what's going on around them. And a lot of, kids, families have soccer nets up in their yards. And these rabbits or birds fly into it thinking that this is safety, and then the owls are following them in, the hawks are following them in, and they get stuck. Even though the rabbit can escape through the holes, the birds can't. So we've had some that have broken wings from it. We've had some that we've been lucky to release. And then we've had some that weren't that fortunate.
So soccer nets, and one other issue is our fishing lines. Sometimes fishermen will get caught in a power line or in trees or whatever. And this was a couple years ago. Dana released this great horned owl that was in Hampton that, as you can see, was stuck in fishing line. This is a lucky bird.
A very lucky bird. Those guys, if those birds are up there too long, they end up losing their muscle mass and trying to get
Dehydrate.
dehydration, and then not eating. And they die from it ultimately if we don't get to them fast enough.
Yeah.
There are a lot of parks that have these receptacles that you can actually put the fishing line in.
Yeah.
And I always encourage people, I know it's not our job to clean up after other people, but when you're hiking, it's inevitable that we're going to have that stuff out there. So bring something to cut it, maybe help take that stuff down and put it where it belongs.
This story ended well. There's a release,
Luckily,
and that's the whole goal, is to get them back into nature where they belong. But many more die that we don't know about.
Exactly. Yeah,
and,
they do.
And you do.
Yeah.
You know about it, and you know. But I mean, this was a success story. That's what Nature's Nanny Wildlife Rehabilitation is all about: getting them back into nature where they belong.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, that's at least we can end on something good, right?
Yes.
There's a release for you.
Yeah.
Anything, Dawn, that you'd like to add about what you want people to know about these birds?
Yes, just please try to look out for them. You're driving at night, drive a little slower. Keep your eyes open. Don't throw food out on the side of the road. That's how the birds get there. We need them in our environment because they do take care of a lot of our nuisance animals. But also, as far as working with the birds, we're always looking for volunteers too if they ever want to get the experience to learn about these guys. And we teach from husbandry. If you don't want to do husbandry, there's other things that you can do also to help these guys. Every little bit helps.
Yep, and donations to keep them afloat is also welcome. You can find out more at naturesnannywildliferehabilitation.org. Right?
Yes, yeah.
All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us, Dane, and all the other volunteers there at Nature's Nanny. We appreciate everything you're doing to keep these birds in the air.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us on here.
Well, we love our nature here on Life Outdoors. Listen, we hope you enjoyed this edition of Life Outdoors. It's new each week. Once again, thank you for watching, and don't forget to live your life outdoors.